Girls, what did a friend do accidentally that instantly turned you on? Before we start, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Story 1. He put me in handcuffs. It was late in the night after a big party, with only a few people left. To give you some context, it was a murder mystery dinner, so it actually made sense for my friend to have his cuffs on hand. As our conversation flowed, he suddenly pulled out the handcuffs and clipped one side onto my wrist. I couldn't believe it when I let him gently pull both arms behind my back and fasten the other side. Talk about an instant turn-on. He playfully guided me around for a few minutes while we continued chatting with our friends, and then he finally took the handcuffs off. Those moments are forever etched in my memory. They live rent-free in my mind. Story 2. We were a bit drunk when he rested his head on my shoulder and his hair tickled my neck. I giggled, which only encouraged him to tickle me more. He playfully rubbed his head against me, letting his hair brush against my nape. Then he cuddled into my neck and fell asleep. It was such a cute, flirty moment, but I definitely felt hot and bothered. Story 3. He leaned over the desk and was passionately venting about whatever, and just the way he was leaning and was speaking. Before I knew it, was imagining myself under him with a similar view. Story 4. Honestly, I wouldn't call him a friend, but I recently started going to a smaller gym where I often see this guy working out at the same time as me. For some reason, I decided to try working out without my headphones, and the sounds he was making were a bit too much to handle. I had to put them back in. Story 5. For years, I usually wore comfy pants and a baggy top to the office. Still business professional, though. One day, I decided to dress up in a fitted skirt, a tailored top, and high heels for an important meeting. As I walked past my friend's desk, he was leaning back in his chair on a call. When he looked up to wave hello, he ended up tipping over and falling backwards. It was a moment that made me see him in a whole new light. Story 6. I recently started wearing a new pheromone perfume that's light, yet absolutely delightful. This was a significant change for me, since I've always avoided scents due to my sensitive nose, so it felt quite out of character. To make it last a little longer, I sprayed some in my hair, allowing the fragrance to follow me as I moved. One evening, I walked into my friend's house, and he immediately went on a quest to figure out where the wonderful smell was coming from. I wasn't the only one there, which only added to my embarrassment, so I kept quiet. Eventually, he sniffed his way over to me, homing in on the source. He leaned in, practically burying his face in my hair to get a whiff of the scent. This was such an intimate gesture, and I have to admit, that kind of closeness, especially when someone breathes on my neck or scalp, has always been a major turn-on for me. At that time, I was feeling particularly vulnerable, trapped in an unhappy relationship with a cheater who was emotionally and physically neglecting me. I felt unattractive and unwanted, so the sudden attention from my friend, combined with his physical closeness, sent my heart racing. Looking back now, it's amazing to think how that moment unfolded. 13 years ago, I never imagined that my friend and I would eventually end up together. Yet here we are, still happily together for the past 11 years. It's incredible how that simple moment, sparked by a fragrance and a gentle breath, changed the course of our lives. Story 7. Every winter I go down to El Salvador with my sister and her husband, who is from there. One of my brother-in-law's friends always hangs out with us and picks us up from the airport. Last time, I gave him a warm hug and hopped in the car. Apparently, that hug was talked about a lot. I have no idea what I did, but he DM'd me a few weeks ago, and now I'm trying to learn Spanish, so I can tell him I want to touch his butt too. Story 8. I was crossing the road with a former classmate from college when, out of nowhere, a car suddenly sped up toward us. Just as I was about to step forward, he instinctively raised his hand in front of me, protecting me from moving into the street. The way he reacted so quickly and decisively caught me off guard. I had never thought of him as attractive before, but in that moment, I felt a surprising rush of attraction. It was fascinating how a simple gesture, one that spoke to his instinct to protect, could completely change my perception of him. I found myself noticing the confidence in his stance and the concern in his eyes. It was a small moment, but it left a lasting impression on me, making me rethink everything I had previously felt. Story 9. A guy friend of mine asked me to be his date for a friend's birthday party at a bar in Hollywood. It was a last-minute invitation, so I quickly threw on some makeup and slipped into my club attire and heels. When he arrived to pick me up, he came to the front door, walked me to his car, and even opened the door for me, offering his hand to help me in. I was already feeling flushed at this point. Our friendship had always had a bit of a frenemy vibe. He loved to tease me, and I usually fired back with even sharper insults, which would leave him doubled over in laughter. So, I wasn't used to him being so genuinely nice to me. Once we parked, he continued to impress me with his gentlemanly behavior. He paid for parking, saying, "I invited you out. What kind of guy would I be if I let you pay?" He helped me out of the car and even held my hand as we walked. I was completely bewildered by this sudden wave of chivalry. As we strolled along the sidewalk toward the bar, I found myself closest to the traffic. He gently placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me to switch places with him. It was a mix of confusion and excitement, and I could feel butterflies starting to flutter in my stomach. Since he was the designated driver, I got to enjoy some drinks, and he covered my tab without a second thought. We danced together all night, and even though he danced with a certain gentlemanly flair, he was still grinding on me like it was just part of the vibe back then. When we finally took a break and sat down, he leaned in close so we could talk over the noise. I could feel his lips graze my ear every time he spoke, and he lingered near my neck just a moment too long before telling me I smelled amazing. Let's just say I was definitely feeling a little flustered. After he drove me home, we sat in the car chatting about the night, and there was a comfortable silence that fell between us for a moment. Feeling a bit tipsy, I blurted out, "This felt like a date. I feel like we should kiss or something." He leaned over with a smile and said something like, "Why not?" At that point, I had never been kissed before, and I could feel my cheeks turning crimson. Then he laughed and said, "Even though I'm gay, my mom raised me to treat women well, and I'm really glad you felt taken care of tonight." He walked me to my door and hugged me goodnight, leaving me with a friend crush that lingered for a year after that unforgettable evening. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That ending was not what I was expecting. But F it. He treated her with so much respect. Way better than some straight men do these days. And the fact that he mentioned his mom taught him those values just added an extra touch of sweetness. Story 10, he hugged me while my coat was unbuttoned, slipping his arms inside instead of just draping them over it. The warmth of his palms on my back was immediate and electrifying. I'd always liked him, but that was the moment everything clicked. Story 11, he told me he really liked my body, but then he got a bit flustered and stumbled over his words, trying to find a way to rephrase it. I could tell he meant my tattoos, especially since I had just gotten a new one on my arm. It was interesting to see him try to navigate his thoughts, and I think I even noticed a hint of a blush on his cheeks. It was a sweet moment, revealing how much he appreciated my art and the way it made me who I am. Story 12, a while back, I own a bakery that was a true labor of love for me. One day, he came in and ordered 30 donuts to celebrate the first anniversary of my business. I was thrilled to see that someone wanted to mark such a special occasion with my treats. He distributed the donuts to local children, bringing joy to their day and making my bakery's milestone even more meaningful. Fast forward to now, and we're together. He has become such an important part of my life. I truly admire his kindness and respect for others, qualities that shine through in everything he does. It's amazing how a simple order of donuts blossomed into a beautiful relationship, and I feel so grateful to have him by my side. Story 13. I recently decided to start going to the gym more often, but I quickly realized that I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. Gym anxiety is a real thing for me, especially since I often don't know how to use half the machines. So, I reached out to my friend and asked if he could help me navigate the gym equipment. We picked a machine that he thought would be easy for me to start with. As we took turns using it, I could see how much he wanted to make sure I was comfortable. When it was my turn, he patiently guided me, adjusting my hands and showing me how to orient my body for the best form. His support made me feel a lot more at ease, and I appreciated how attentive he was to my needs. Even though we're still just friends and have never pursued anything more, I can't help but feel a little flutter when I think about those moments we shared. Unfortunately, we don't go to the gym together anymore, but I still cherish the time we spent working out side by side. It was a unique experience that not only helped me with my fitness journey, but also strengthened our friendship in its own way. Story 14. His bathroom sink was fully stocked with an impressive array of hygiene products. None of that 3-in-1 nonsense. We're talking about dedicated face wash, hair wash, and body wash, along with moisturizer and sunscreen. He had a shaving cream, a traditional razor, and an electric razor, all neatly organized. I also spotted dental floss, a hairbrush, and a beard comb. It was immediately clear that this guy takes care of himself far more than most men I've met, and I found it incredibly attractive. Seeing all those products laid out so meticulously sent a strong message about his commitment to self-care. It wasn't just about cleanliness. It showed that he values his appearance and well-being. Honestly, I had never felt such a strong urge to get with someone before. There was something undeniably hot about the way he embraced grooming and personal hygiene. It caught me off guard in the best way possible. Story 15. When I mentioned that I'm not very knowledgeable about European history, we ended up diving into a conversation about various events that unfolded over the centuries. More accurately, he was enthusiastically sharing all this fascinating information while I just sat there, completely captivated with googly eyes. I really appreciate it when a man is smarter than I am, especially when he shares that knowledge without a hint of condescension. It's such an attractive quality. Story 16. We were sitting at a cafe when I made an observation about something, and he really seemed to get me. It's hard to put into words, but it felt like he understood me in a way that I had often felt misunderstood in the past. After that, we found ourselves diving into deep conversations that revealed just how super cool, quirky, and talented he is. We even made out once after enjoying a bit too much wine, and I was completely smitten afterward. However, one day he confided in me that he tends to lose interest quickly after sleeping with someone and didn't want to risk our friendship. Because of that, we never took things further. My insecure side wondered if I wasn't conventionally attractive enough, even though he assured me it wasn't about that, and that he thought I was beautiful. Maybe he's emotionally unavailable and knows it, or perhaps he has some secrets I never uncovered. Regardless, I didn't hold a grudge or get angry. It did take me some time to move on and accept him as just a friend, which he still is. He's become the quintessential example of someone I had to get over, even though we never technically dated. Losing interest after being intimate with someone is often a clear indication of intimacy issues. It's concerning that he hasn't sought therapy for this, but the fact that he warned her first shows that he genuinely cares about her as a person. Story 17. He sent me a photo of himself holding his cat, and it absolutely melted my heart. There's something incredibly endearing about seeing a guy show affection for animals or children. It really speaks to his character and capacity for care. It might not be the most thrilling story compared to some others, but I'm happy to share that we ended up dating. Fast forward to about a year and a half, and he moved in with me. It's been such a wonderful journey, filled with love and laughter, and I cherish every moment we spend together, especially those cozy times with his cat by our side. Story 18. A huge spider, bigger than his hand, was crawling right toward me, and I was practically frozen in fear. Without hesitation, he jumped into action, grabbing the spider and trying to crush it with his hand. But in a surprising twist, the spider somehow managed to squeeze through his grip and make a break for it. I was watching wide-eyed as it scurried away. Determined to catch the little intruder, he searched my house high and low, checking every nook and cranny until he finally managed to capture it. It was a dramatic scene, but it also showcased his protective nature, which I found incredibly endearing. Fast forward 13 years later, and we're still together, happily navigating life as a couple. We have a wonderful 9-year-old son who brings us so much joy. Story 19. Before we started dating, my boyfriend was one of my closest friends within our large friend group at school. I had always found him attractive, but I was convinced he only saw me as a friend. He had mentioned that he had never had a girlfriend or fallen in love, and he often turned down girls who tried to flirt with him. Because of that, I thought I didn't stand a chance. One night, while we were just friends hanging out at one of our friends' houses, we started play fighting, which was a typical thing for us. We got a little carried away, and in the heat of the moment, I ended up on top of him and accidentally felt something that completely shocked me. I couldn't believe he was still a virgin, given his size. I froze, feeling a mix of surprise and embarrassment, but he just shot me this teasing look that changed everything. From that moment on, our dynamic shifted. Now, we've been together for a year and a half, and it's been such a wonderful journey. Looking back, it's funny how a playful moment transformed our friendship into something deeper and more meaningful. Story 20. He told me that he liked me and my kids. At the time, I was a mom of 3 and had resigned myself to the idea that I would probably be alone forever. After all, who would want to take on that kind of baggage? But fast forward 10 years, and here we are, happily married with a 4-year-old and a house, all thanks to his support in helping me pay off my debt from my divorce. And the best part? He still genuinely likes me, He's also almost 10 years younger than me, which adds an interesting dynamic to our relationship. I actually met him in a bar while doing karaoke. He was friends with all my friends and my sister, and we quickly became close. Our friendship blossomed into something more, and he's still my best friend to this day. It's incredible to reflect on how far we've come together. Story 21. He started playing some silly game with me, full of teasing that immediately drew me to him. Then, when I began to cough just a little, he became genuinely concerned and showed such caring. I wasn't even that sick, but his kindness sparked some very spicy fantasies in my mind about him. I guess I was a bit of a twisted weirdo. Having never received much love before, that kind of genuine attention felt like a breath of fresh air. It was refreshing and exciting, and I couldn't help but be drawn to his warmth. Story 22. I was in his car, and even though I've never really been into cars or car guys, I couldn't help but glance over at him as we were chatting and speeding along. There was something about the moment that caught me off guard. I just wasn't prepared for the rush of seeing my friend behind the wheel of his fast car. My body reacted in a way I didn't expect, and it was both thrilling and surprising. Story 23. I found restraints on his bedpost from an encounter with an ex and made fun of him, then asked him how they work. Instead of telling me, he proceeded to put the ankle restraints on me and threw my legs over his neck and showed different ways he could do me. I've known this dude since I was a kid, and he's family to me, but I instantly wanted to drop my inners and say F our childhood. Let's ruin a friendship. So that's how I found my kink in college. Imagine having that much guts. Rather than being embarrassed, he gives a full dry run of how he'd do her. Story 24. One day, during our time at university, a close friend of mine playfully pulled my ponytail with just the right amount of firmness to grab my attention. I hadn't heard him call my name, and the sudden tug made me jump a little. It caught me off guard and took me a moment to catch my breath. There was something about that unexpected gesture that lingered in my mind, making my heart race. Fast forward to today, and we're married. Looking back, I can't help but smile at how that little tug on my ponytail turned into a beautiful life together. Story 25. He jumped up, grabbed the fire escape ladder, and effortlessly pulled himself up, climbing all the way to the top. I couldn't help but watch in awe, my heart racing as I witnessed his determination and strength. It was one of those moments where everything seemed to slow down, and I found myself captivated by his agility and confidence. Just oh dear, that unexpected display of physical prowess was a revelation for me. It made me realize that I have a thing for people who can climb or pull themselves up, whether it's literally or metaphorically. There's something incredibly attractive about that kind of tenacity and fearlessness. Story 26. I offered him a sip of my drink, and he made intense eye contact with me as he slowly put the straw in his mouth and took a nice long sip. I found it kind of weird to be turned on so much by him sucking on a straw. We've been dating for over 2 years now. Story 27. He was driving while I sat in the passenger seat, enjoying the scenery and the music playing softly in the background. As we approached a parking space, he needed to reverse to parallel park. I watched as he effortlessly turned his torso toward me, casually placing his arm around the back of my seat to get a better view. There was something about the way he did it, so confident and self-assured, that caught my attention. It felt natural and almost intimate, and I couldn't help but feel a flutter in my stomach. Story 28. There were several moments that stand out in my memory. At one party, he danced with me and actually lifted me into the air, which was such a surprise. I'm not exactly thin, and not many people have ever tried something like that with me, so it made me feel special and carefree. Then, during a trip with friends, his cousin created a makeshift tent using sheets and a bunk bed. We decided to crawl inside together to read manga on his phone. As we settled in, he wrapped his arms around me so we could both see the screen comfortably. It felt cozy and intimate, and I remember enjoying that moment a lot. Just to clarify, he wasn't interested in me back then, but fast forward, and we've been together for nearly 4 years now. It's incredible to look back at those moments and realize how far we've come together. Story 29. We were watching a movie together when he pulled me in for a hug. As he held me, he gently ran his hands up and down my back. I could tell he didn't mean anything sexual by it, but I have a really sensitive back, and it sent unexpected shivers of excitement through me. The next day, he teased me about being ticklish, and I couldn't help but blush. Eventually, I admitted the truth about how much I enjoyed that gentle touch. Unsurprisingly, he decided to try it again later, and I found myself feeling that same rush of attraction. Now, we've been dating for over a year, and we're approaching 2 years together. Story 30. When he effortlessly switched between languages while talking on the phone with his mother, and then casually asked me to pass him his wallet, I was genuinely impressed. I knew people could switch languages like that, but I had never witnessed someone do it with such fluidity. The way he flowed between conversations was almost mesmerizing, and it made me appreciate his linguistic skills even more. Story 31. He dressed up like a pirate for Halloween, sporting a flowy white shirt that was open in the chest, paired with tight black jeans tucked into tall black boots. The look was bold and striking, and I couldn't help but admire it. But the next day, he returned to his usual khakis and polo, and I quickly got over the pirate fantasy. It was amusing to see how one night could completely transform someone's style, even if just for a moment. Story 32. My roommate has this incredible scent that drives me wild. I once asked him about it, and he casually mentioned that he doesn't wear cologne. It's just his natural smell. Honestly, it's surprising, but it really turns me on. I know it's a bit unusual, but I can't help it. Story 33. I was really starting to freak out at a bar on Halloween, feeling a panic attack coming on. Just then, he reached down, gently grabbed my chin, and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" In that moment, my anxiety vanished, at least temporarily, and I found myself feeling completely different, almost transported to a much better place. Story 34. I was holding a nearly empty glass of champagne when a friend asked if I needed a refill. Before I could even respond, he took hold of my elbow, pulled me closer, and said, "Come here," while filling my glass with his other hand. The gesture wasn't forceful, but it had a firm confidence to it. As someone who enjoys a little playful manhandling, I was instantly captivated. Story 35. I had a really good friend who also happened to be my chiropractor. After I switched jobs, I rarely saw him, so we'd catch up over drinks and dinner every few months. One time, I casually mentioned that my neck had been bothering me while sitting on a bar stool. Suddenly, he stood up, grabbed me, and told me to relax. Right there in the bar, he cracked my neck and then just plopped back down like it was no big deal, continuing our conversation as if nothing had happened. I was left there thinking, what in the panty wetting, hoo-ha moistening, all dark meat chicken licking world just happened? Story 36. I was sharing my tough day at work when, just as I felt tears welling up, he suddenly broke into a goofy dance. Not serious at all, more like a squiggly worm. It completely cracked me up. I ended up marrying him a few years later. Story 37. When I was about 20, I had a 55-year-old lesbian coworker who I was really close to. She was amazing, super cool, and we shared a lot of interests and outgoing personalities. We spent a lot of time together. One day, as we were hugging goodbye, she gave me a light peck on the neck. She meant it as friendly affection, but wow, it really stirred something in me. I think as a guy, I'd never really experienced a kiss or touch on my neck like that before. Story 38. I was having a tough day, feeling less talkative and not smiling much. We were sitting at a table together. I was next to him, but not too close since it was a regular table. Our friends were further down, chatting and laughing. In the midst of all the noise, he turned to me, gave me his full attention, and asked if I was okay. I answered half-heartedly, trying not to draw too much attention. Then he pulled me into him, chair and all, wrapped his arm around me, and wore the most concerned expression. At that moment, I fell in love. He was probably in love too. That kind of caring goes beyond what I've experienced in a normal friendship. Story 39. In August, we were in a garage playing music, and he was kneeling by the wall, choosing the next song. I did a good old Slavic squat next to him and said something that must have sounded a bit sad because he looked up and placed his hand on my back. It turns out he'd had a crush on me for about 9 years, just as long as I'd had a crush on him. Now we're dating. Story 40. One time, I was humming a tune, as I often do without realizing it, and had started singing quietly, again without noticing. I was focused on something at the conference we were attending, and he had just come back from whatever he was doing. He walked up next to me, then suddenly stopped, staring at me with a goofy grin and a shocked expression. When I asked, confused, what he was doing, he told me to never stop singing because he could listen forever. It was such a small moment, but I had only ever been told to be quiet when I hummed or sang while working. Being a words of affirmation person, that really hit me. Now he's stuck with my humming for good. I married him 2 years later. Story 41. He knew my favorite nostalgic childhood meal was Dino nuggets and smiley face potatoes. After a tough week, he invited me over to watch a movie and talk, but he surprised me with Dino nuggies, smiley potatoes, and 2 bottles of my favorite wine. The gesture hit me hard. It made me want to cry, but it also sparked a different kind of desire. Now we're married. Story 42. There was this guy in college who was good friends with my roommates. Since I was a grade younger, they had all gotten to know each other well before I met them, but he was around a lot, and we got along well. I always felt a bit off around him, not in a bad way, but not really like I had a crush either. It felt a bit like having a crush on Humphrey Bogart, too handsome and cool to even think about it. Anyway, one night they all went out to the bar without me since I was still underage. When they got back, he stopped by my room. He stood in the doorway, holding onto the door frame, relaxed in his t-shirt with his arms flexing. In that moment, it hit me like a truck how attracted I was to him. Yes, we ended up dating after my then boyfriend, and I broke up. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.